Hello, hello. Welcome to the Collaborative Intelligence Show Live. My name is Jim Kalbach. I am the Chief Evangelist at Mural, and I'm going to be your host today. And I have a special guest who's going to be talking about psychological safety. The topic of today's show is psychological safety. Before I get into that, though, just wanted to bring on Sunni Brown and Mark Tippin to say hello quickly. They're going to be co-hosts throughout the series here. Hi, Sunni. Good morning.
Hi, good to see you. So just really quickly, for those of you who were here a couple of weeks ago and you stuck with us during the holy chaos and the technical turbulence, thank you for that. And also just a reminder, this show is, I'm going to say this and then y'all tell me correct me if I'm wrong, is about democratizing a discipline called collaboration design that is really mobilizing collaborative intelligence. And so we're going to gamify it and we're going to make it real and meaningful. So that's why we're here. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Mark, you're going to be the host of our next show, which we'll talk about at the end. But thanks for joining today.
Good to be here. And hopefully this is a way for people to observe until you're comfortable enough to jump in and do with collaborative design.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're super lucky to have Alla Weinberg, an expert in psychological safety. And what I'd like you to do is just respond to this prompt if you haven't already done so in the chat, whether you're in LinkedIn or here on Zoom. What makes you feel safe? We'd just like to see some of the ideas and thoughts that you have around what makes you feel safe. And as we're doing that, I am going to shift over to bring in our special guest, Alla Weinberg. Hi, Alla.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's a super important topic, right? And we're going to get into that a lot more. But before we do, I just wanted to ask you if you could introduce yourself, talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and Spoken Wheel, the company that you work for.
All right. Yeah, I'm Alla Weinberg. I'm the CEO of Spoken Wheel. It's an organizational design or culture design and team development company. And I'm also the author, as you have on the mural here, of the book, A Culture of Safety, Building a Work Environment Where People Can Think, Collaborate, and Innovate. My background is in product design. I spent 10 years in product design. But then throughout that decade of being a designer, I also got a lot of training and, learning myself around coaching, around systems work, and around personal development and organizational development. And so I bring all of that, my design background, my coaching background, my systems background all together to do culture design.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know the book is published by Sense and Respond, who are friends. Jeff Gotthelf and Josh Seiden are friends of Mural. I've had Jeff on the show years and years ago. I've stood on stage with him as well, too. How did you connect with Jeff and Josh?
Honestly, I sent in a proposal. I woke up one day, after having, not a great experience at work, another one, I guess. And I just felt really fired up to talk about this topic. I said, something needs to change. I need to get my voice out there and help really change the cultures in companies.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love that background. And the book is, and if you know the series Sense and Respond, they're very compact books, so it packs a lot in there. It's
really elegant.
Yeah, it's what is it, like 50 pages or something. You can really get into it very, very quickly, and I really appreciated that. But I have to say, Alla, we've talked on the phone a couple times now, and I think I learned more about psychological safety in those 2 phone calls than I did from any of the other books that I've read, including yours. So there's this interesting, because I'm an author as well too. There's this interesting effect that. Particularly topics like psychological safety, you can write about them, but I wanted to have a conversation around psychological safety here because I think it's really important. And I think your perspective is one of the best in the industry. So just briefly, and I know you have some slides to show, but briefly, just to frame things here, what is your definition of psychological safety and how do you approach it?
Psychological safety is, Amy Edmondson actually has the original definition, which is you can share your point of view, can talk about mistakes without fear of retaliation. That's psychological safety. I actually talk about safety a little bit more broadly because I say that you have to have physical safety and emotional safety in order to be able to have psychological safety.
Right.
And so for me, safety, which is a little bit of more of an umbrella term, I define that as a state of our nervous system. Because I think we forget this in work environments and corporate, that we are biological, right, beings. And when our nervous system feels safe, then we feel internally calm, we feel relaxed, and most importantly, we feel connected to the people that we're working with.
Right.
And then we can think. And then we can have psychological safety. Then we can speak about our minds, our opinions, our ideas, or even admit mistakes to each other.
And this isn't just about having a warm, fuzzy, and great employee experience. I just heard something the other day, and I want to bring this up to you and see how you react to it. That agile, as a philosophy, the agile rituals and agile as a framework doesn't work unless you have psychological safety. What do you think about that?
I 100% agree. And again, we have to be cautious here because it's not that any company has no psychological safety or 100% psychological safety. There's a certain level for whatever team or organization that you're working with, and it's different for each team. There is a certain level of psychological safety that needs to exist for things to work. But Agile absolutely will not work. The principles and the rituals will not work without psychological safety because a lot of that is empowering the team to make decisions, to scope out work, right? To move into a different direction. But that's what Agile is, right? You be nimble to move into a different direction.
Right.
But if I don't feel safe enough to say, hey, like actually the data we're getting and the experiment we're running isn't working and we need to shift. If I don't feel comfortable saying that, I'm not really doing Agile. I'm just kind of following dogmatically. I'm going through the motions, I'm going through the actions of it, but not really being agile at that point.
Right. Because agile breaks, large complex problems down, usually software, into small bits. And then there's learning, right? And if you can't reflect that learning back out because it's not a safe environment, you're not really doing agile. You're just coding or whatever, you're going through the motions.
A huge tenet of a huge part of the definition of psychological safety that Amy Edmondson wrote, she's the original person that coined the term psychological safety, is being able to admit mistakes. And that's a huge part of Agile, which is to say, hey, like we ran an experiment and it didn't work. And here are some mistakes and we learned from that. And then so we need to go, this means we need to try a different experiment, go in a different direction, make a change. Yeah. How often does that not happen in companies? We're just like, well, no, we're just going to keep going. But Agile is sort of a way to say, we just want you to work faster rather than to work in a nimble, learning, adjusting sort of way.
Right. And I love that pairing of psychological safety and autonomy, which you just touched on. Because sometimes, you hear, from management level, be autonomous. But they don't realize that comes with its own preconditions and baggage as well, too. And you can't just tell a team to be autonomous. They have to earn it. They have to have the conditions that are right to be able to be autonomous, right?
Yeah. And also not fear for, their livelihood if they were autonomous and a mistake happened, but rather be celebrated to say, oh, well, yes, a mistake happened. Right. We brought it up quickly so it didn't become a huge problem and we learned a lot from it.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
And then incentivize people to do more of that as well, too, right?
That's right. That's right.
Great. I hope I didn't take too much away from your presentation, but I know
not at all.
And it's okay. It's okay if we repeat some of this, but I'd love to stop sharing and give you the stage because you got so much more goodness, and I'd love you to talk through some of these points with the folks here with the slide deck here.
Absolutely.
I'll give you the screen
share my screen. 1 second. I'm gonna play. Oops.
And as she's doing that, if folks in the chat, if they want to just let us know what makes you feel safe, just anything you can think of that what
there
makes you
are
feel
cool
safe.
Ones I can read. One of them was from Elizabeth Williamson. It says, understanding the hidden codes of a social situation, meaning the unspoken rules of engagement and behavior. Yeah. That's an interesting one,
Absolutely.
And there was a lot about body language and communication and stuff like that.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Very interesting that there was a lot about body language, because that's the key. That's the key to feeling safe.
Because you're biological, right?
We're biological. And so let's talk about that. You can see my screen. You can see what is safety.
We got you. It's all good.
You got me? Okay. So as I said, very briefly, safety is a state of our nervous system, but I want to dive into that because it really has a lot to do with our body. It has a lot to do with it. And our nervous system has 3 states. It has a safe state, a mobilized state, meaning the fight or flight kind of response, and an immobilized state, which is feeling more numb or shut down. Okay. What happens for us as human beings in our bodies, like physiologically, biochemically in our bodies, is we go up and we go through these 3 states all day long. We feel safe, then we feel something happens. We get an angry email from someone, like, oh no, we need to do something, right? We get kind of a rush of adrenaline. Or sometimes we get 200 emails, or there's a fire, and you kind of feel like overwhelmed. And so start to feel like shut down and numbed out a little bit. And so we go through all of these states all day long. Okay, this is just the human condition. We're almost never, I'm not going to say never, we're rarely ever like just always in a safe state, right? Or always in an immobilized state. I don't want to say never. I don't want to talk in absolutes, because when our nervous system does get stuck in a state is because of trauma, which is something that, as a global population, to a large extent, we've all experienced over the last 2.5 years, just even minimally with the pandemic. Like, everybody's life has changed in some way. And when we experience that much amount, and it just continues, like, especially in the United States, it just continues on a daily basis. Like, there's constantly crisis and like really hard events, like the shooting that happened in Texas yesterday, then our nervous system can potentially get stuck in either a mobilized or immobilized state. Okay. So we have to be aware of that. I'm saying that now because we have to be aware of that now in the current, state of the world that we're in. But let's talk about a little bit more about the nervous system, because it's key to understanding safety. So when I talk about our nervous system, I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system, or ANS. And this is the part of our nervous system that controls all of our unconscious functions, like breathing, digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, all of those things. And it has one and only one goal, and that is to protect us, to make sure we survive, to make sure we are alive as human beings by sensing safety and risk just moment to moment. This is the super interesting thing that I learned. 80% of the information we receive to our brain comes from our nervous system. 80%. And so anything that we're processing in our brain, a lot of that information, a lot of those signals are coming up from our nervous system. And here's the key that this is the one thing, if you don't walk away with anything else, this is the one thing I want everybody to remember, is that we feel safe. And this is, again, how we're biologically wired, when we feel connected to other people, when we have connection. Yeah. So if other people's body language, so our nervous system, if you look at the diagram, we have nerves coming up into our eyes, into our cheeks, into our face, right? Into our mouth, into our throat. Like that part of it is there because it's checking. Like what it's doing is checking, is the person I'm talking to or the group of people I'm talking to safe? Or are they going to, in the nervous system sense, attack me in any way, right? But are they smiling? Are they relaxed? Are they non-threatening, right? Like we're all constantly checking, are we connected to that? If we have that connection that our nervous system can tell, then we're going to be in a safe space. We're going to feel better. This is why isolation as part of, in the jail system is such a horrible punishment. Because if you're isolated and you have no connection to any other human beings at all, it's put a really heavy stress on our nervous system, and our nervous system will get stuck either in the mobilized or immobilized state. Okay. And so what neuroscience researchers talk about is going up and down the ladder, as I mentioned. So if I'm up at the ladder, and then the reason it's a ladder is you have to go up and down in a specific order. You can't skip steps. So if I'm feeling safe, then I feel, again, connected socially. That's really important. I feel at ease. I feel like I can see the broader picture. Okay. And also what's interesting, and I wrote this in my book, is my IQ is at its like my operational IQ, what I'm able to access in this moment. I can access the full range of my IQ here because I'm feeling safe. Mm-hmm. If something happens, again, we're going up and down the ladder the entire day. Something happens and I feel mobilized, I'm going to go down one rung. I'm never going to go directly to immobilized. I have to go down rung by rung in a hierarchical order. Then I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I feel like I need to fight or flight. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling irritated. And here my IQ drops by half. I no longer have access to it because physiologically my body's activated and resources that would normally go to the part of my brain that can think are getting diverted elsewhere. So you can run away or you can fight, right? Like it gets diverted to our arms, our legs, so that we can actually save ourselves and survive. Mm-hmm. And then if again, something that's happening is happening chronically for a long period of time and you feel like I can't get out of it, you're going down the ladder again into that immobilized state where you're like, I just can't handle this. I get numb. I get shut down. I don't feel like I feel powerless. I don't feel like there's anything I can do. Okay. And if you want to go back up the ladder, if you're immobilized, you have to go back to mobilized before you can go up to the safe mode. All right. That's why a lot of times if, something happens to us and we feel upset, we call a friend, we call a spouse, we call a partner, because that connection is what tells our nervous system we're okay. We're doing all right. Mm-hmm. And so, and this is what I mentioned, without safety, we literally can't think. So our nervous system is sending all these signals to our brain. Something's wrong. There's danger. We need to fight or flight. Half of our IQ is available to us. Or socially, like it's not safe to talk about my feelings. People are going to judge me. I might be even, my job might be in danger if I speak up. That's the social, emotional limbic side. Our IQ drops, right? Mm-hmm. The people I'm around aren't safe. We can't think. And so, as I mentioned, trauma, which is, again, it's really important just in the current world state that we're in, is our ANS stuck in either a mobilized state. So I'm hyper vigilant. What's going to happen next? Something bad's going to happen. I need to always be prepared, or immobilized. I just feel numb. I don't feel anything. Nothing's coming through to me. Mm-hmm. And that leads, so the ladder leads to then 3 types of safety, because you have to have certain conditions in order to be able to think and get to the psychological safety. So the first, and again, it has to be in this order before you get to, because we're just wired that way. Like it has to be in this hierarchical order before you get to psychological safety. So the first one is physical safety. And it's a shared belief in a group of people that every physical body is valued, respected, and included. And so in physical safety, it means my livelihood, meaning my job is not in danger. My health, so like COVID is, if I'm feeling scared to go back into the office, but it's a requirement, I'm not going to be able to think. I don't feel safe at that point because I'm constantly worried, oh no, am I going to get sick, right? And also that my physical body is free from any kind of harassment or discrimination, or that I'm free from harassment or discrimination due to the way my physical body looks or functions. And so a lot of people actually felt a lot more psychological safety as a result of going remote because other individuals no longer had access to their bodies in the office. So that's really important because it's not the same level of physical safety for everybody in the office.
Yeah.
And if you like, let's say you do have a level of physical safety that you feel like as an individual or even as a group, you feel like, there's a good amount of physical safety. People feel like, their job's not in danger. They feel okay health-wise. They don't feel harassed in any way. The next step is emotional safety. This is a big piece that's really missing in most companies. And it's a shared belief in a group that all emotions are valid and the expression of any emotion is welcome. And I worked with many companies where some people are allowed to express some emotions. So like men are allowed to be angry, but women aren't. Mm-hmm. Women are allowed to cry, but men aren't, right? Like there's some emotions that are okay and some are not, mm-hmm. right? So Black men are not allowed to be angry. Then they're scary, mm-hmm. right? But if you have emotional safety, as a team, not only can you express any emotion to each other, but you know how to do that skillfully as well. And we're going to do an exercise together. We're going to like practice this today. This is a super, super important piece. And so this is also key. You cannot have collaboration, since we're talking about collaboration, right? You can't have collaboration without emotional safety. Because if you don't have emotional safety, what you're doing is you're either coordinating or you're cooperating. You're no longer collaborating. Because if somebody has an idea and you're not sure about it, or you feel scared about it, and you say, hey, and you can't say, when you mentioned that idea, I actually felt a little scared about it. I'm not sure if this is I don't feel comfortable maybe going this direction. If you can't say that, then you can no longer collaborate, because there's no way to get to like a shared solution or a third way together. Mm-hmm. You're just going to coordinate with that person. Okay, well, I'll try to make it work so I feel okay about it. Mm-hmm. And then once you have, again, to the level that makes sense for the group that you're working with, some physical safety, some emotional safety, then you can get to psychological safety. And this is Amy Edmondson's definition. So a shared belief that no one in a group or team will embarrass or punish anyone else for admitting a mistake, asking a question, or offering a new idea. And this is where innovation, creativity starts to flourish. This doesn't mean be a jerk. I think that's a common misconception. Oh, we have psychological safety. We can say anything, anytime, and we can just be jerks to each other. Well, no, if you're jerks to each other, then you don't have emotional safety anymore. But it means you can offer an idea and not be scared that somebody else in the group will say, oh, that's stupid. Or just dismiss it. Oh, no, we can't do that. Next, you will kind of feel, you can predict a little bit around, how people react to it, and you'll feel socially connected to them. All right. That's my spiel.
Excellent.
I feel like applauding, actually. So
yeah, we should.
Let me just collect my jaw from the floor and hinge it back on here, because
it's so potent.
Yeah, that was, again, every conversation I've had with you has just been really mind-opening. I love the fact that you're framing this as safety, right? And it's like there's these different levels of safety too. My question seemed so innocent before, can agile exist without psychological safety? And now going through this, it's kind of like, no, for all the reasons that you just mentioned as well too. No. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. And since you already hinted at it, I'm going to ask Mark and Sunni, and is Amber going to play too? Or
yeah.
Amber's going to play as well.
Yeah, if we make room for her. And also I want to reassure the people that because Alla just totally downloaded some really powerful stuff, that we are going to make room for y'all to ask her questions. Totally. And yeah, because it's like, that was so important, Alla.
We're going to open this up as
I know
well,
I went fast and just did like this dump.
Yeah, no, it was really good pace.
You just gave us the holy grail.
Yeah, it was. But you talk about this in the book as well too. And I think hearing it from your own lips and then reading the book, like I'm going to go back and now connect some things that I didn't necessarily connect in my mind when I was reading through that. We also have Patty, by the way. If folks haven't checked out Patty's webcam, I don't know if we can highlight Patty real quick. And I don't know if you realize this, Alla, as well, too. But we're getting a graphic recording of this. Is that what you call them, graphic recordings? Is that okay? So we'll have that artifact as well, too. And we can digitize that as an image and send it around.
Yeah, that's Patty Dobrovolsky, and she does a lot of good work around emotional safety as well. So I'm hoping she'll ask a question. No pressure, Patty.
Yeah. I got like 20 questions just from me. So we're going to have to bust out the end of this session to have a broader discussion, but
yes, we'll have you, even though you're introverted, we might have to have you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. All right. So do you want to set up the game here a little bit, Alla, and tell us what we're doing?
Yeah, this is called Fact, Story, Feelings game. The game is, and it does create psychological safety with people because it creates connection. Mm-hmm. And the way to create connection, and this is a whole other thing, is in a simple way, is to reveal what's going on for yourself as a human being internally. And that really is all vulnerability is. People think vulnerability is I have to disclose my whole life story. And that's not true. Like, you don't have to tell, you don't have to talk about your childhood. You just say, like, this is what's going on for me right now, internally, inside of me, in this moment. And so I'm just going to reveal that to you, and being honest. And we said, like some people said in chat, honesty, open communication, that helped them feel safe, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a way to be honest with yourself and with each other about what's really going on for you. And so the best way to use this as a team is, hey, you just had a meeting and it was really tense. Like it was a really tense meeting and you need to process that. And, or the meeting had a lot of misunderstandings and people are really on different pages, flying to different pages. And so this is a way to reveal, like, oh, this is just where I am with it. And when you do that, then you have a choice. Okay. And so the way that this works is everybody puts in facts. So a fact is anything that can be recorded, like by a video camera. So something that you said, so like a quote, not an interpretation, a quote, or something somebody did, like, you know, I sent you an email, or, you know, I made this mural or whatever, right? Like it's an action. And then the story is what is my interpretation of the facts. Well, when you said that, that just means that you didn't agree with me. Like that's my interpretation of it. And then I have some feelings as a result of that story. And so maybe I feel angry that, you know, you made that comment because of the story that I made up. And so kind of just distinguishing that and pulling that apart, even just for yourself, even if you don't share it, is really helpful, number one. But two, if you share it, and you even have a meeting around it, like like this is how you talk to each other, you have a conversation in this way, that's going to start to build more psychological safety because these people are being honest with me, they're revealing to me, and I can feel more connected to each other in this way.
But does it need to be a mutual? Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Does it need to be a mutual share? Like when you do these experiences, there has to be reciprocity, right? Because otherwise it's just lopsided. Okay.
Yeah, it needs to be a mutual, something that's going on, something that has been mutually experienced by the team. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we had a planning session. We're in the process of creating the Collaboration Design Institute. Another motion we have here at Mural to solidify collaborative intelligence and collaboration design. And Mark and Sunni and Amber and I were in that meeting. So we're just going to take a minute and do the fact, story, and feelings. And I see you guys already got a head start, so that's good as well too. And then Alla, you can walk us through how we're supposed to talk about this.
Sure, I'll just give you a minute to fill it in.
Okay, this is where we need the music, Mark or Jonathan or somebody. Next time we'll have. No, we need it in the product, right? That's what we want a thing.
Well, and also like for the audience, you guys. So we did socialize a little bit of this with each other, right? Because this is a live show, so we didn't want to like do a gotcha moment or like surprise the hell out of each other. So we did. Just so you know, we primed it a little bit. Mark, I know there's like not optimal timing for you, but we're not oblivious to the fact that this is also a space. This is a container and it's a live broadcast. So there's variables there that we considered in terms of safety for each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to talk a little bit about if you want to run this kind of exercise with your team, it's important to be thoughtful about who's in the room. Because if there are significant power dynamics or differentials, people will not feel as safe to talk about facts, stories, and feelings rather than if it's more on a peer level. So we have to be careful about that.
Right.
And insensitive to that as well.
Yeah.
And any kind of activity that you're doing around psychological safety, any individual has to be in choice whether they participate or not. Otherwise, it's no longer safe. If it's a mandatory activity, that's not safe anymore. You know, now I'm not in choice. So
being voluntold.
Yeah. All right. I think we're mostly there with Sunni, Mark, myself. I don't know.
Okay.
Where do we get started?
So let's start with Mark. Mark, if you could just give us a little context of the meeting and then the fact that you brought up. So just go like this. This is the fact. This is the story I made up about it, and then the feelings that I have.
Absolutely. So this was one of the first large workshops where new teams are coming together. There was an acquisition recently, so we have people coming together for the first time. So I was on high alert for the use of the tool, Mural tool we use. And it seems trivial, but I intentionally picked something that seemed really trivial to even get present to how many emotions show up over even trivial things. Yeah. So I noticed that the default size of sticky notes in the Mural that was prepared for us weren't the right size.
Right.
And so instantly, the story I made up about it is people don't understand our best practices. Right. Mural makes it really hard for people to do the right thing. And then I started problem solving, like what's going to go wrong? Is type going to be the wrong size? Are people not going to be? I just instantly went to overwhelm. I felt anxious, upset, and kind of exhausted because we've been trying to fix some of these things for a long time.
So you got mobilized, Mark. That's what, that's exactly what you're describing right now.
Exactly.
That mobilized me too, Mark, because I mean, this is something we've been trying to deal with for 7 years. And I was actually like, we still don't get that right, because working around the default sticky note size changes the way that you use Mural. Why can't we get that fundamental right? So I was frustrated by that, but I'm blaming myself.
I was like, we should be able to get this right for people. Yeah,
I totally blamed myself, us, me in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I share that, Mark.
And that's the story you're telling yourself, Jim. Like, it's my fault. We haven't been able to fix it.
I think a lot of people default to the "it's my fault" story.
Mm-hmm.
We're receptive to that idea that somehow we did it wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if tucked behind that is not, I really want to be right. So I want to make sure, I want to check first if I'm wrong, because then if I'm not wrong, then I really want to declare how right I am about it.
But a lot of times we want to be right, just so for everybody on the call, or we worry about being wrong. Is we're actually avoiding certain feelings. And I think people are putting that into chat. Some feelings of shame. We want to avoid that. We don't want to feel that, and so we go to blame instead, because it's a way to discharge. Blame is a great way to, even if it's towards yourself, is a great way to discharge emotional charge that you have, rather than feeling disappointed, feeling in yourself, feeling any kind of shame. It's avoiding certain emotions.
Right. That was a big facepalm moment for me too, though. So thanks for sharing that.
I would never have even discern that. So I really appreciate y'all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen people struggle with that issue.
So many times.
It changes everything else, how they understand what Mural can do from that point down. Wow. Should we go on to Sunni then?
Yeah. Let's go.
Oh,
Sunni.
Mark, do you feel complete?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I am so enjoying the ability to feel it, address it, and let go. Find a healthy way to let that energy out. Yeah.
And Jim, you feel complete around that too, because it was short too.
Well, I jumped in, but yes, I feel completed because Mark feels completed.
Okay.
We complete each other.
Like that. I was thinking that you would go next, Jim, because I'm not sure. I'm vacillating between two different options. Okay, cool.
So I initially declined the meeting because I had, right after my webinar yesterday, I had to go to New York City, and I had an hour to do that. And it's about half an hour to 45 minutes. So I initially declined that meeting. And then I changed my mode of transportation from the train to the Uber. And it occurred to me I could actually join the meeting. And so the story that I made up in my mind was, so the fact was I declined the meeting, right? And then I changed my mode of travel. But the story I made up in my mind was a little around FOMO. It was fear of missing out. And I was like, well, if I could just dial in and listen, and I actually did it on my phone. So we were using Zoom, but I dialed in through my phone, and I could see the screen, but my camera doesn't work, so nobody could see me. I just felt like I needed to just be there. It was a total FOMO thing that I made up in my mind, but then I felt like dead wood. I felt like, because I felt like an observer and I wasn't contributing or anything like that. So then why did I have FOMO? I don't know because the team obviously was able to do it without me there, right?
So Jim, in the feelings, it's still a story that you have. What you wrote in the feelings is still a story. Like I felt like dead wood. So a feeling might be you had anxiety because like the FOMO was anxiety that you had, like you need to be there, you're going to miss something out, like you're scared, you're going to miss something out.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then maybe during the meeting you felt disappointed or in some way, or
I disappointed would be the one.
Right. And so, this is why this kind of game is really important, because so often we will stick to the story and not actually identify the feeling underneath of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's important. It's just good practice. It's good practice to do it. Sorry, Sunny.
Oh, no, please. I was just thinking about, to use a fancy word, interoception. So meaning like connecting to the visceral and the physiological experiences. And so naming, because it's hard for us to name emotions, to even know, to identify it in the body and also to name it. So maybe at some point we'll talk about that.
Well, I have an emotion that I don't have a name for. Is that I felt disappointed, but I also felt like I felt useless.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that? What's the word for that? Like feeling useless or super?
Not worthy.
Yeah, because that feels like a story still.
I know. So what's the emotion?
Felt unwanted, unloved,
unneeded.
Unneeded.
Maybe it's lonely.
Lonely.
And also, Jim, I would encourage you to find it in your body, because sometimes you don't know it until you find it in the body. Sorry to interrupt you, Alla.
In the body. I have to think about it.
Yeah, feel into it later.
But it's interesting that I just writing. I kept doing stories and not actually the emotion.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, the thing that's also interesting, Jim, and you should probably hear, is when you showed up, there was a genuine feeling of delight. Like, oh, Jim made it. I'm so glad he's here. I am glad that he's, his radar is on the conversation that's happening. So, but that wasn't expressed.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't alleviate any of that by just short circuiting against the way people actually felt.
Right.
Yeah, because I was inviting him purposefully, like, oh, please. Yeah.
Well, that's what gave me FOMO, by the way.
Oh, I wondered about it.
You caused my FOMO in the first place.
I totally thought about that in a moment, like just now. I was like, oh man. Oh.
Maybe I should be there.
Triggering event for you to really? You think you would not have experienced it had I not invited you?
I think so. I think because I was just like, because you cancel meetings all the time. I'm just canceling another meeting. And then you said, oh, I think you should really be there. And that's when I felt the FOMO.
Oh, yeah, because it was our team charter meeting. I'm like, you're so. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My intention was to help you feel invited and loved.
It's okay, because I think it then worked out, because I was able to, in the end, I actually started feeling better when Jesse and what's her name? Jory?
Uh-huh.
They actually started taking my stuff from the chat and calling it out, because I couldn't actually do that. So I felt.
So Jim, just kind of to help people out, the way to even start to increase emotional safety even within this team is, let's say Sunny invited you and you started to feel something like some anxiety about some FOMO about it, that you say, hey, you actually have a conversation or send a message to Sunny saying like, when you invited me, I just noticed I started to feel some anxiety about it, right? Like then you're you're actually again revealing. I had an emotional reaction to this conversation.
But she was right though too. So I would want to encourage that for her to do that again.
To invite you again?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll know it might create some anxiety, so I can check in with you about that.
But it wasn't like real anxiety. It was just like
just a little moment.
But it actually was real, because you were trying to call in from a cab, and it even like as your description was like kind of chaotic, and like I was feeling anxious just listening to you.
Oh, you're empathic.
I also get car sick when I look down. So I was looking at my phone and I started getting car sick. So that was my body.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally nauseous at that moment.
Yeah.
You guys didn't know that either.
So just so you know, Jim, like there's no way for you to contribute to your, in your best way to that conversation, given that circumstance.
Right. Oh, okay. That's good to know.
There's,
Okay.
I mean, your IQ is not at its peak at that moment.
Right, because that's good. Okay, so I'm less hard on myself now. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah.
As noted earlier.
Right. Should we do one more?
I just want to give folks some time to ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm kind of conscious of that.
Yeah,
as well.
agree. Is it okay if we move on to the Q&A then?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Mark? Okay.
I just want to check in with folks. Like, how was that conversation? Okay. Just even having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a problem because it's Sunni and Mark and Amber. And I can pretty much say anything to those guys, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're like 100 people watching, you know.
That's because I can do it in front of 100 people though, too, you know.
It's brave.
I think we have a very emotionally intelligent and safe space that we've created for ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
I think
a little pod.
For me, I felt the learning was that yes, I felt safe doing it, but even acknowledging that much stuff was happening,
right? That
much noise was happening while we're trying to focus on signal.
Yeah,
that we move on or we have coping mechanisms for, but that big empathy for an audience that is in that state trying to do the right thing in these meetings. That's a lot.
Yeah, the emotional labor required to stay present to ask is very real. So Alla, when you were asking about questions, can we open it to people actually coming in on Zoom?
Yeah,
sure.
If so, I want to encourage y'all to do that. I know it's hard to break the fifth wall, as they say, or the fourth wall, but it would be amazing to have other people reflect on your experience or ask a question either way. And you don't have to be like a genius. You can ask like the most basic question because it will ultimately help other people. I guarantee you questions you ask will serve others.
And I saw Rude come in with his webcam on, and I saw your question come in first, Rude. So I'm going to go and say hello to Rude real quickly, and you can ask Alla your question here. So why don't you unmute?
Thanks, Jim. I was having some physiological safety issues with a vacuum cleaner that's learning about my house with artificial intelligence under my desk with cables. But the question I wanted to ask, thank you, Alla, for explaining this kind of context. This is really interesting. With us only having parts of our body parts visible here, and some people have their camera switched on and some have them switched off, and it's by choice. It's not something you want to mandate or control. What kind of recommendations do you have in that aspect? Let's say when setting base rules, or we work a lot with students where cameras on is really very optional most of the time. It's an extremely difficult situation.
That's a conversation about boundaries, actually, and that's different for each group or for each team. What boundaries do people need to then feel physically safe? So having a camera on is a choice around physical safety. So do I feel okay doing that? And so that's actually a conversation before kind of doing a top down. This is the rule for our engagement. Actually having a conversation around that with folks, does it create more or less safety for you all to have camera on or off, to have choice around that, or to have certain periods where it's on, certain periods where it's off, there's a lot to unpack there for people and to understand what's really going on. And so I don't ever recommend making blanket sort of statements or rules of engagement, but rather it's just a beautiful opportunity, I think, to talk about what helps us as a group feel safe.
Right. But I would imagine, Alla, that from the nonverbal cue perspective, it's probably better for a team if the webcams are on because you're getting that nonverbal signal as well, too. Would you agree with that?
I do. And again, so that definitely gives you a little bit more feedback for sure. Again, some people may not feel comfortable with that. So,
And yesterday, I have to say, I did a session. The reason I was going to New York is because we were getting a demo of a 30-foot screen and how that works. And Mark was on the other end of the call out in Portland, and he was like 4 feet tall, like his face was like 4 feet tall. So like I got like too much nonverbal communication from you yesterday, Mark. Like I could see you blinking and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But I do want to mention that we can get a lot of connection just to the tone, to the pace of somebody's voice. It's not all visual, because not every human being has sight, right? So it's we can establish connection by any of the senses that we have as human beings.
Oh, I love that you said that. So I worked with an accessibility nonprofit, and they had an expression which was called the tyranny of the eye. And obviously I'm a devoted visual thinking educator and advocate, but I also am multisensory for that exact reason. So we design game storming sessions specific to that whole cascade of options available to people. And it's my perception, and I think Patty has a question about it, but I could be wrong, that there's a lot of multisensory work you can do even in digital environments. So we'll explore a lot of those, you guys, during the show too.
Yeah, these are all topics for future shows. I'm going to move on to James's question. James, are you here? Do you want to turn your webcam on and ask your question? I think it's a good one.
Sure. Hi, Alla. Good to see you.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
We used to work together.
Oh, nice. Hey.
And thanks for, I feel like I gained a lot from the presentation. So thanks for that. And then also I thought it was really interesting in the dialogue, Jim, and I think I struggle with this too, like going from like your emotions to telling a story. And I was curious, like if there's, strategies or different things that you can kind of use to check yourself to really kind of be more honest with your emotions rather than like, bringing it to a story right away. Because I think I definitely do that as well.
We all do.
Yeah. I mean, that's just how our brain, honestly, I just want to know, like, that's how our brain works. We're storytelling, meaning making machines. Like that, we will tell a story about anything, like a rustling in the bush. Oh no, it's a lion, like we'll thing to make sense of the world. And so it's okay to have a story. Just be aware that's a story I'm telling myself, the emotions behind it. But once you know the story, you can choose a different story. You can say, what's a different way to interpret this? Or what if the opposite of my story is true? And how is the opposite of my story also true? Trying to actually your story is a little bit more will even change how your emotional state, how you feel about it, because your emotions come from the story that you're telling yourself.
Yes. And I was going to say, you guys, she actually has really great exercises in this book, and I think you can download it for free. I bought mine, Alla, so just shout out to supporting authors. But there's some wonderful activities, and it does remind me of this Byron Katie. It's called The Work, and it's like, is it true? So you say you have a narrative, you identify it. Is it true? Is it 100% true? Because people always go, yes, it's true. And then you go, is it 100% true? And then you say, how do you feel when you believe the story? And then you turn it around and you experiment with it. So we could have you on again, Alla, and do that.
We can. I will come back.
I know you're shy, but you're awesome.
And I think there's actually, I wanted to go over to Bill Lucas, because I think you made a suggestion here. Bill, you want to talk about this on the sticky note? Does that originate from you?
The Wheel of Emotion?
Well, I was plus wanting.
That's it.
I was plussing, I don't know the name here. Theo N had first mentioned it. And I was just saying I've had success with that as well.
There are a lot of emotional vocabulary lists. I do recommend using them with your teams, especially because we don't have enough vocabulary as we're just not taught that very well. And so getting more facility around it, I think, is great and really important.
Okay.
I had success, Jim, to give you a more concrete example. I had success using a basic wheel of emotion visualization, not quite as thorough as the one that Theo linked to, as a warm-up exercise to some experience diagramming. So it was the style of experience diagramming that was mapping sort of the ups and downs.
Yeah.
And to get people primed for that kind of plotting of an experience, I had them just move some dots onto a wheel of emotion at the same time. And we could just sort of get a quick heat map.
Right.
Of course, that's very similar to what y'all do in more gamified versions with Pick Your Nick and those other kinds of things.
Right. Okay, great. And just for background, Bill joined Mural as part of the Luma acquisition, because Bill is a co-founder of Luma. So welcome to Mural, Bill.
No, thank you.
I'm going to go to Antonio because Antonio decided to raise his hand using the Zoom function. Yeah, so cheers for that.
Hi.
And we don't actually know your question yet, so you can ask it live here.
Bienvenido,
Yes,
Antonio.
Gracias.
Igual.
Hello, everyone. This has been great, and just my question was a bit practical because one of the main issues is that we not need to go through that wording hurdle first. So this is so important because it doesn't need just a one-time only conversation. It's just a process because we need to first generate the wording aspect that is like the basis and it's pretty much intellectual, and then going through the emotional unraveling or deployment, and it needs probably more than one. And we were talking in the chat, how do we do this? We first start with the wording, creating some basis, and the wheel of emotion is great because it's a visual way to start from the center, from basic emotions, and then opening the kernel to more diversity. And I also loved Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart visual depiction of islands. How do you feel when you are afraid? I like that idea because we most of the times, and she even says, you don't feel just one emotion. You feel like an emotion. And myself as a highly sensitive person, I feel like 20. So I think this is so important. It's so important to stress the importance of having a process and having a humble and a kind process, because people won't open from the get-go. You need some first to create confidence, to create trust. Some of you even said, you need to create a space that elicits emotions, but also a process that sustains over time. So that was my question and comment, because how do you go through that? How do you
I think that's a great point, because I think what we wanted to show in the exercise that we did is that there are repeatable and consistent ways that you can have these conversations, right? And you can actually facilitate. It just doesn't have to be, well, everybody has a brain in the nervous system and I give up. That you can actually steer this a little bit, right, Alla?
Yes, absolutely. And I also don't recommend if in your team you've never spoken about emotion, that you go into the first meeting and like, okay, we're going to talk about emotion. And jump into the deep end, right? You need to build. So so safety is something that you can increase and you can build over time. And there's no checklist that's like, check, we're done, we got it. We have psychological, emotional, and physical safety. It's just something that you continue to maintain and you can continue to build. And so you have to also know your team and their readiness for the type of, like the next conversation that they may be ready for that will increase safety versus decrease safety. And when I say increase safety, I mean increase connection with each other as human beings. That's really it's synonymous to me.
I love that. That's so important and powerful and potent, like, attachment theory and like the polyvagal theory and all that stuff. But it's like, this is why I think in meetings, when we're facilitating meetings, when people have that sort of ambient sense that there's like threat on the margins, that we'll go and find just our one safety buddy. We won't call it that, or, you know what I mean? But we're like, and I'll be texting Mark in the background, like, Mark, help me.
The back channel safety buddy.
All the time. I'm like, you guys help me. I'm panicking, freaking out. And they're very kind.
We've all, I think everybody on the call has done that back channel safety buddy,
totally.
Right?
Yeah. 100%.
But you know what, Alla, I remember one of the first times I talked to you, we were talking about Mural, and I think I mentioned that there's back channel conversation, and you said there's a psychological safety problem if that's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was one of your flags. Right?
It's a flag. Yeah. Yeah. If there's something I can't talk about, then or I can only talk about with certain people, but not other people.
And we even went off of like an off channel. Like this isn't even on like the Mural channel. Like we got to take that offline.
Carrier
trust that person. Let's do that.
We're texting or something, right?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
If then there is a disconnect. Then there's
a
something
disconnect there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's go to one more question. I wanted Elizabeth was the next one on my list too. Elizabeth, do you want to come on? Thanks for waiting so long here. Is Elizabeth still here?
Well, her question is, so that's good.
Okay.
She was the one earlier who talked about the secret codes of a culture.
Okay. How do you acknowledge the fact that some team members may not have physical and emotional safety in situations where it's difficult or impossible to change those conditions? I think might need more explanation. I guess Elizabeth dropped. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't see her on the list.
Okay. I don't know if you have any. Do you need more context, Alla, to be able to respond to that?
I'm just going to take a stab at it. Okay. Well, first is to acknowledge that different people will feel different levels of safety. A lot of it due to their physicality, their race, their gender, their abilities, right? All of that.
Their history.
Yeah. And so even going into that, knowing that. And so a lot of, and I agree that there's a lot of policies in companies which don't take that nuance into consideration. Like they're sweeping in that sense. But I don't believe that it's impossible to change. Minimally, those things can change at the team level, if not at the broader organizational level. So then we have the conversation as a team. What helps you feel safe, or where are areas you're not feeling safe, or if it's not a team conversation yet, the manager can have, or the team manager can have a one-on-one conversation with certain individuals. Like, here's what I'm observing here. And again, you can use the stories. Like, here's the story that I'm making up about it. What's really going on for you here? Are there protections that I can set up as a manager to help you feel more safe? Right? Are there processes? Somebody mentioned processes. Are there different conversations, different rituals, different ways to run things that we can set up that you feel more safe? So, for example, one thing that is really powerful, which just struck me, and it wasn't me that came up with this. I read it in a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And I'm sorry, the names escape me, but I know the author's first name is Resma. And in that book, he wrote how people of color often come into rooms where there's a lot of white people, and it feels unsafe. Like it feels like you're walking into a dangerous territory as a person of color. And so his suggestion was to reverse it. Like if you're a person of color, set it up that people of color enter the room first. And they get comfortable and they pick their spot. If it's physical, right? It can be virtual too. Like people of color can enter the room first, and then white people can be let in, right? So like even those kinds of, honestly, as a white woman, I never thought of that. I never had that experience, right? But it really struck me, and it really stuck with me to be like, oh, this is a different way. The small change but makes such a huge difference in how people physically feel safe, right?
And I think we're going to have to end it there, but I think that example that you just gave is part of what we're envisioning around collaboration design. That might be a very sophisticated nuance, but we believe here at Mural, collaboration experiences at work and at school and in government organizations, they can be designed in a way that fosters not only psychological safety, but a sense of belonging and a sense of accomplishment together, and all of those layers that really go into collaboration. And I love your distinction of collaboration as being kind of that higher order of connection and purpose. And it's not just, you're not just coordinating activities, right? It's you are collaborating, and all of these things go into that, and they all go into collaboration design as well too.
And that's why I think it will be valuable for all of us throughout the process of the show, because we're going to keep mobilizing wonderful methods like yours, Alla. And Mark, I think he has to say, we were going to just acknowledge that your show next week is coming up, so there's more to do. And then I'm sure give Alla mad props.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. Should we do that? What's the safest way to like blow you kisses?
Yeah, we can do this. You can do this. We can do jazz hands. But hey, I want to thank everybody backstage. There was this whole team of people that got this to go together. Letitia and Jonathan and Kristen and everybody. Yeah, thanks guys for getting this on. And then Mark and Sunni, my co-conspirators here. Thanks for taking on this show. Not LinkedIn Live, Collaborative Intelligence Live. But Alla, My mind is blown here. I don't know if anybody else had this like little blowout in their brain cells here, but that was really important and absolutely fantastic. So thanks for being our guest.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
And next week we're going to do one of your draw your creature exercises, and we'll try to do it justice. But
and
we'll
folks can download a free version of my book on my website. Just download it for free PDF. Go ahead and
you can also buy it though if you want to.
You can buy it. You can also buy it.
Which we recommend. But Mark's going to be back next week, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, same slot, and we're going to keep this conversation going. So hope to see all of you there.
Yes, Linda, love you. Good to see you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Good to see you.